Hello and welcome to a review of the Damiano Defense, a chess opening that begins with the moves pawn to e4, e5, knight to f3, and when black next plays pawn to f6, this is the Damiano Defense. Today I will go over a little background on the origin of the Damiano Defense, and then I will show you some main lines to help you decide if you would like to play the Damiano Defense with the black pieces, or at least know how to attack against it with white. And so let's begin with some background on the origin of the Damiano Defense. The Damiano Defense is one of the oldest openings. In 1512, a book was written by Portuguese chess player Pedro Damiano. In the book was a study on this opening, in which Pedro Damiano stated that he did not like the opening and did not recommend it. But due to the popularity of his book, his name was forever attached to this opening, and it became the Damiano Defense. And now we will go over some of the main lines of the Damiano Defense. This opening starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, and f6, the Damiano Defense. Now, why would somebody play this f6 pawn move in the beginning? Perhaps they were familiar with another opening, e4, c6, and then d4, d5, the Caro-Kann defense. In this defense, a c6 pawn push protects the d5 pawn, and perhaps they thought they could do the same with the f6 pawn in the Damiano defense. But here we see this c6 pawn push allows the queen to exit and possibly attack by checking white's king. But if we take a look at the Damiano defense, once the f6 pawn is pushed, the diagonal that is opened is just a weakness, where white may use this open diagonal to attack black's king. And so the preferred method of attack against the Damiano defense is to use a knight sacrifice. White can take this e5 pawn and not be afraid of a recapture by this f pawn. Because if that happens, such as pawn takes e5, white continues with a queen attack. And here black has options, one being a block with the g6 pawn. But this is not recommended because white continues his attack. Queen takes e5, attacking king and rook. And here black may block with the queen, but white is winning after he captures the h8 rook. And so if we go back through the moves from the beginning to reinforce it in your memory, e4, e5, knight to f3, f6, knight takes, pawn takes, queen checks. Here instead, if the king flees, white can check, the king will move again to f7, and white continues the attack. Bishop to c4 check. The king is forced to move once again, but there's a move that he makes before the king retreats, blocking with this d5 pawn. And the reason this is done first is to open this bishop, allowing the bishop to come out and help with the defense. And so White captures, checking the king, and the king once again runs to the g6 square. And white continues the attack with the h4 pawn, marching up the board. h6 by black, allowing an escape hatch at h7 for the black king. And here, instead of continuing with this h pawn, white can switch to the queen side, capturing this b7 pawn. And here, the bishop cannot be captured with black's bishop, because this bishop also covers the f5 square, and white would like to move his queen there for a checkmate. And so instead, black has the possibility of moving bishop to d6, attacking the queen, but as long as the queen stays on this 5th rank, threatening a checkmate here, in this position, white is ahead, and if you look at the evaluation, he's ahead by +5, so white should be winning. And so if we go back over these opening moves, another possibility after queen attacks, king moves, check, king to f7, and bishop to c4. Here, if black, instead of blocking with this d5 pawn, attempts to move immediately and run to this g6 square, white will just continue with another attack. Queen check, king is forced to the edge of the board, h4, and black is in trouble once more. Game may continue with another attack and look something like this. g5 blocks the check, but the attack continues. A double check on the black king by the pawn and the rook, forcing the king to flee. But now the attack is continued with bishop to d2, hoping to move this bishop to c3 and press on with the attack, checking the king. And here the d5 move once again, which allows this bishop to attack white's queen. But white continues the attack, checking with the bishop. A block by the knight, but it's no use. White continues attacking. King retreats, check again by the queen, which cuts off this escape square to e8 for the king. And so the king is forced up to the g8 square, but now bishop captures or queen. If the queen captures, the end is close, only a few more moves, and there's nothing here that black can do. And so if you decide to play the Damiano Defense, it's recommended as black that once white captures this e5 pawn, the better move is not to capture with the pawn, but instead move your queen to e7. And now white must be careful, because if white continues with the normal attack with the queen, thinking that if g6 is played, the knight can capture, and here if h takes g6, then the queen will capture the rook. But in this position, black has an in-between move of checking and then after this block, capturing the knight. And here black would be ahead. And so instead of letting this happen, it's better after this capture and after the e7 move by the queen, it's better for the retreat by the knight back to f3. And then here, if the queen captures the pawn on e4, checking immediately, then bishop to e2 can just block and white is ready to castle. Or another alternative would be d5, and the pawn cannot capture the d5 pawn because of the queen pin on this pawn. But he would play d3, and an exchange of pawns, queen checks, bishop blocks, and in this position white is ready to castle. His pieces are a little further developed than black, and if we look at the evaluation, he is still ahead. But in this position, there is a famous game of Bobby Fischer being held to a draw by a lower rated player in a simultaneous exhibition. And this game can be searched, found on Google online. Feel free to search for that game. So it is possible to play this Damiano Defense. And I would encourage you to try it out yourself. Let me know what you think. Leave comments. But overall, I would recommend something else for black instead of the Damiano Defense. Perhaps the Caro-Kann or some other solid defense with knight to c6. And so today we covered a little bit of the background on the origin of the Damiano Defense, and I showed you some of the main lines. But I would say the conclusion of this information is that the Damiano Defense may be fun to try out and see how you do, but I would not use it as your main defense. Choose something more solid like the Caro-Kann defense, or instead of just playing this f6 move, knight to c6 openings would be better. And there you have it. The review of the Damiano Defense. Let me know what you thought of this review. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe. Have a great and wonderful day. Thank you very much.